So, ladies and gentlemen, the House has passed the bill to require proof of citizenship when registering to vote, and 198 Democrats tried to block it. Yeah, interestingly. The House approved a measure Wednesday to require proof of U.S. citizenship when registering to vote, a measure strongly opposed by top Democrats. A majority of 216 Republicans and 5 Democrats voted to pass the Safeguard America Voter Eligibility Act, with swing district reps Henry Cuellar of Texas, Vicente Gonzalez, Jared Golden, Don Davis, and Marie Gluesenkamp Perez among those crossing party lines. Now, for those that are watching live, I will say I stand corrected when I said Democrats march in lockstep with their party. In this instance, swing Democrats actually did defect, but it wouldn't have mattered anyway because Republicans were definitely going to pass this. And also, it wouldn't matter anyway because it will die in the Senate, or actually, it'll never make it to the Senate, and Biden would veto it anyway.
With those 5 that crossed party lines, just before that, those 5 voted with all the Democrats to keep that bill off the floor. So my opponent's one of those 5. But when the bill came up for the procedural vote to put it on the floor, every single Democrat, including those 5, voted against it. And then once it was going to be on the floor, leadership approved the 5 swing districts who are vulnerable right now. I'm up in the polls. Let them vote with the Republicans because, like you said, it's going to die in the Senate.
Yep.
And that way they can go home and say, look at the things that I do.
He's lying about me. I don't want illegal immigrants to vote in our elections.
It's interesting because it would be nice to see authenticity on this issue because I think it does affect all Americans. I mean, we talk about illegal immigration in terms of crime. It affects every American in terms of the crime. You talked about the drug trafficking across the border, the effect it has on the area you live in. There have been reports that, African-American voters are saying, hey, this is actually disproportionately affecting me because you're making it so I'm having a harder time with employment. There are challenges that I'm facing because of this. I mean, I think people have a more nuanced understanding of the complexity of allowing illegal immigration to flood across the border. And so it would actually behoove a lot of Democrats to say, hey, we take the verification of who is participating in the election seriously because we know it really could affect you and affect your life. I don't think that has to be like some sort of weird race issue. I mean, even the White House, when they condemned this act, were saying one of their complaints was it'll make it harder for Americans to vote, as if Americans can't produce some sort of ID or verification that they are citizens. I mean, it's just so ridiculous that it's obvious why they want this bill to go through.
But when you are registering to vote, typically, most people through the DMV, you have brought your piece of mail, your birth certificate, and your social security card and your credit cards with you to get your ID in the first place. The idea that you could not produce any of that to register to vote, but you have to get an ID. It's just bonkers.
It doesn't make any sense. That's how threadbare the defense against it from the White House was. And again, it stands to reason that there are Democrats who, I think you're right. They probably all were like, well, I really need to vote for this because of my constituents. But hopefully there are at least some of them that can see the logical thread of like, no, it's worth verifying who is voting in the elections. Asking for proof of citizenship isn't a racist act. It's just, hey, you should be a citizen here to vote in the country. That's who gets to vote here.
Yeah. 2 years ago when we said that Biden opened up the border to flood the country to skew the census numbers so that they could get more allocation of U.S. House of Representatives seats, they could get more electoral college votes, they could eventually get these people to vote. They said that we were conspiracy theorists, we were racist, we were horrible. This is the second vote where they've proven exactly what their intent is. A month ago, the Republicans put forward a bill that said only American citizens would be counted in the census and only American citizens would be counted when it comes time to allocate U.S. House of Representative seats, electoral college votes. All the Democrats voted against that. So this is now the second time that Democrats have said they basically want illegal immigrants and non-American citizens voting in our elections, completely and totally disrespecting American citizens and our ability to choose our own government.
I've been thinking about it a little bit because the White House had said at one point when they condemned this act, they were saying, oh, well, it's already illegal for illegal immigrants to vote in our elections. But then we talk about the HAVV, the voter verification system, and how many people come up as a non-match. And it makes me think like, okay, well, if you believe the law is reinforced, this shouldn't offend you. And then also you should think it's good because someone who doesn't speak our language, who's trying to get a driver's license or whatever, may not understand that they are being registered to vote. And then you're setting them up for failure. I mean, it's so illogical that they would be opposed to this unless they're just going to be direct about what they want.
Well, my response when they said it's already illegal for them for non-citizens to vote, why make the law? And I said, you're right. Murder is already illegal too. Why ban guns?
Right. Exactly. Why talk about it?
Great. There we go. So so you repealed the NFA. and then we won't worry about this one, I guess. I don't know.
Do you think it's good that they brought this to the floor anyways, even though it'll die in the Senate? You think yes?
Yeah, it's very good. It's very good to show exactly what would happen if the Democrats get control of the U.S. House, if they continue to have control of the Senate, and if they get control of the executive branch, and to put them on record. They're on record right here, and I really encourage people to look at the procedural vote, because procedure really dictates and a lot of times trumps policy. If you can control procedure, you can control policy. And every time the Democrats put forward pieces of legislation, they vote in lockstep on the procedural vote. And anytime they go to block anything the Republicans are doing, like closing down the border, stopping inflation, preventing illegals from voting, the Democrats will vote in lockstep to attempt to kill it before it goes on the floor.
Yeah, I think it's good too.
And the reason procedure is more valuable is because deciding what gets seen,
Yes.
kind of, because people are going to vote yes on whatever they see, if they're going to vote yes at all. So. So they'll get lockstep on the procedure to try and make sure things don't come to the floor. But then if they do, they're like, well, we can send like 9 of our guys to vote yes on that because we can afford it.
So it's a pretty big deal when you vote against the rule vote that your own party puts forward, and you never see Democrats do that. Democrats will always vote in lockstep. If Republicans go to put a bill forward and the House leadership, the minority leadership in this case, says don't vote for that, all the Democrats won't vote for it. Same thing when they have the majority. I mean, Pelosi had an iron fist. She made sure everybody was voting for all her rules. You don't see that as much on the Republican side. There's a lot of Republicans, the Freedom Caucus types, a lot of types that you guys have on this show. They will vote against the procedural vote to jam it up if they don't agree with the bill. They won't vote straight party line. They will vote with their conscience and with their district.
You know what? I just saw this really great super chat from Gary Marks. He says, you can't even buy Sudafed cold medicine without ID. Yeah. Combine that statement with the Democrats' arguments against voter ID, which is...
Well, you can't expect people to have IDs and know where to get them. Just whichever. We can't say.
No, what's the Democrat argument?
Disenfranchised, poor people,
the Democrat argument is that predominantly Latino and Black people don't know how to get IDs.
How can they get Sudafed?
So then think about these cities that have banned the sale of Sudafed without ID and what they're trying to say. Democrats, what are you implying about the minority community when you require them to have IDs to buy cold medicine?
Yeah.
They're making a very, very interesting statement by doing that.
Yep.
I mean,
you can't apply logic to it. It's right up in your face. They basically want illegals to vote. Anytime you make a logical argument, they're like, yes, but the border's open and we're trying to flood the zone.
Yes, but this is how we'll be voting on this issue. Stop talking about it.
Exactly.
Because I think that's the other part. There's a lot of we don't want to continue to have these conversations. And I think even 4 years ago, you could have been like, they would have thrown out racism, right? They would have been like, you're a racist if you vote for this. This is able. And there wasn't that kind of complaint right now. It was like, this is ridiculous. Even I saw a couple quotes in the Independent article we had up earlier. The minority leader for when she was asked about Anna Paulina Luna's bill was like, it's just a waste of time. There becomes this there's a shift in narrative being like, well, it's ridiculous. The White House saying, oh, the SAVE Act isn't necessary. It's going from, and they don't do this on everything, but on some of these issues, it's less about attacking you to make you feel bad and feel scared to vote for it. It's more about like, well, actually, you guys are just wasting time. This is ridiculous. Again, I think it's to kind of distance themselves from the conversation entirely. And
to just be dismissive of it, to be like, oh, no, this isn't a real thing. That's not really happening. And it's like, well, then why'd you guys open the border up?
Yeah. Are there any other issues? I liked what you said before that like now we have on record who is voting on this and how they voted. And to your point, the procedural vote might be more indicative than the actual vote. Are there any other issues like this that you would like to see brought before Congress to see how representatives shake out before the election?
I think that we should continue to vote on H.R. 2, the Secure the Border Act. I think that should be brought up pretty much every week and put people on record, because the Democrats right now are in full retreat mode from the Biden agenda. After the debate, the Democrats were all like, oh, they're distancing themselves from Biden after voting in lockstep with the Biden agenda. So it's kind of like, what's the deal, guys? Were you following Biden, or did you know that he was mentally declined, and what's your excuse for following him? But I would like to see H.R. 2, the Secure the Border Act, put forward basically every single week to put people on record. Like, we have an invasion on our southern border. What is your excuse for not addressing that? People are dying in my district and throughout the country from fentanyl. What is the excuse for taking no action? And I think they should tie it to funding. I think that's worth shutting the government down over, saying, hey, we're not going to fund this government one penny until the executive branch actually secures the border. If you need extra tools, here's H.R. 2. It's sitting on Schumer's desk. Sign it tomorrow.
Yeah.
You're saying your district in Washington, you guys, is it coming across the Canadian border?
Some is coming across the Canadian border as far as illegal immigration goes. I don't think we've seen an uptick from like the fentanyl and narcotics trafficking. That's all coming from south of the border, the San Diego area. But basically the I-5 corridor is the fentanyl expressway because Washington, Oregon, and California all have very, very lax drug control measures. They're all sanctuary states as well. So the amount of illegal activity that takes place on that corridor, in particular the trafficking of fentanyl, it's just off the charts. We've seen a skyrocketing numbers of people dying from fentanyl overdoses in our district. I've done ride-alongs of all our different county law enforcement, talked with the DEA task force, and they say all of it's coming right from across the southern border.
When you say secure the border, are you concerned about the Canadian border?
No, I am for sure. Because of the CBP1 app, basically the ability to fly into the U.S. directly or fly into Canada and then cross the Canadian border. A lot of people from China, from Southwest Asia, are coming to Canada, to Vancouver in Canada, and then coming across the border that way because they can basically book their travel through the CBP1 app to get access to the country and declare asylum. That's another big thing that HR2 closed. It closed the asylum loophole because basically under Trump, you had to either remain in Mexico or go to the first safe third country. You couldn't come directly to America. Biden got rid of that. That's why if you look at the footage from the border, and I've been down there twice, the people that are coming into the country illegally, they're not running away from the Border Patrol. They're running to the Border Patrol so that they can claim asylum right away. That automatically then gives them a legal status inside the U.S. That's why you hear AOC say, well, it's not illegal to declare asylum because we're basically granting these people a legal status almost immediately.
It's like subsidized
it is.
immigration in some way because
100%.
You say asylum and they're like, okay, well, now you can stay.
And it's going to make it harder to deport them.
Is it like a random guy with no ID comes across the border, a 27-year-old guy, speaks Spanish, you don't know who he is, where he's from, and he's like, I'm running away from the Venezuelan corruption, and you're like, okay, welcome to the United States.
They know exactly what to say.
And here's a work permit and a social security number.
Yeah. And a lot of them will ditch their IDs. When I was down there in San Diego, we did a whole video on it on my social media. There is just a massive amount of ID cards from all over the world that are getting thrown right on the Mexican side of the border or right on the U.S. side of the border. So these guys will come, they'll ditch their documents, they'll claim asylum and say, hey, I'm being persecuted in my home country because of my political affiliation, my sexual orientation, my race. They know all those buzzwords to say, and that gives them a parole status in the country. But if without documentation, without an actual ID card of knowing who they are, it makes it even harder to vet them. But they've already been given a legal status into the United States.
Like they could have a fake name.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, the Mexican government is issuing temporary IDs to Chinese nationals. So we found a lot of Mexican ID cards down there at the border that actually have, you can tell. You can look at the picture and you can look at the name. It's a Chinese person, but they've been given that ID card to give them a temporary status in Mexico as long as they're transiting through Mexico across the border.
The Chinese or the Mexicans are doing that?
The Mexican government is giving these ID cards, these temporary IDs to Chinese citizens. I think they pay a couple $100 for it. And as long as they have a limited amount of time they stay in Mexico and they're transiting through to come to the U.S., that gives them a legal status inside Mexico. Right? Those ID cards are useless to them once they get to America, so they ditch them. There's guys down there who are ranchers along the border that have entire walls full of these ID cards.
Yep. It's wild how abused the system is, in large part because people know they can cross into America, and especially under Joe Biden, they know that the way he's positioned himself and the way his government works, they're going to allow you to stay because once you declare asylum, and they're like, great, we're going to vet you, here's some paperwork, come back later. And maybe some people come back for their appointments or for their hearings and stuff, but like probably not. And so you have people who have this claim to asylum but are not actually not completing the asylum process, or the asylum dates are years and years out, and it just becomes this terrible system. And then you'll get, Democrats especially being like, well, we need better cameras and more judges. And really, we just need to stop incentivizing people to illegally enter the country.
Yeah, none of the Democrat proposals have fixed the asylum loophole. Only HR2 fixes the asylum loophole, and that's something we've got to get our hands around. Otherwise, we're going to continue to have the invasion.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.